Hello and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. This time I'm going to show you how I made this little vanity case, very small piece of luggage, out of recycled card and not much more. The main material that I'm going to be using for today's build is recycled food packaging. This is the kind of cardstock, sometimes referred to by Americans as chipboard, but it's the stuff that you put in the recycling pretty much every day. And I like using this because it's free and pretty plentiful around here. I have begun by drawing out a plan of the vanity case, flattened obviously, onto some graph paper. I've done this because it just makes it easier with the measurements, and I got it to hand. You can just do it on plain paper, on the card that you're going to use, whatever, but I got it, so I've used it. And here I've got the base and the lid both flattened out and ready to go. I took my pattern and I glued it on to my card. I did this, glued it on with a glue stick straight onto a piece of the recycled card, and then I just cut them out. Only cut it out once, didn't cut out the pattern and then stick it on and cut it out again. I just did it like this. It was mostly because it's sort of the easier option as far as I saw it. I'm going to leave this on the inside. You could temporarily stick it, remove it, whatever, but it's going to be covered up, so it doesn't really matter. Before I begin on the lining or even the exterior finish, I am going to score the lines where I will fold my pattern to make my vanity case. Now I'm using my small ruler and I'm using a fairly fine tipped embossing ball tool, and I'm just making a nice firm line along there. Now you always score these lines on the outside because you want the fibres in the card to, or paper if you're using paper, to actually stretch, and apparently that means you have to do it on the side that's going to be outside. I don't fully understand it, but that is one thing that I do remember from my paper crafting days. With the scoring completed, I've just folded the pieces together roughly so that you can get an idea of the finished size of the piece. It's going to be quite substantial, as these cases were in real life, but not that big by doll's house standards. We're not making a suitcase, although you could use a similar technique for making a suitcase. Now for the lining, I'm using scrapbook paper, and this is from a little pad, comes at this size, and I've chosen this one because it's quite a subtle print. It's not really a print, it's just a sort of random kind of splodginess, but I think that's going to work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the lid and the main part of the case to the back like so, just using some of my acrylic glue, thin coat, and then when it's dry I will cut it out, but that is as complicated as it gets. When I cut the lid and the box out after the lining and the card layer were securely stuck together, I left some extra little bits which are going to be tabs. Now because this is going to be such a small piece, I obviously didn't want to use extra pieces of the card because it was going to be make it really bulky, so I'm going to just use this to just help support the piece as it gets glued together, and that's my next job. I have stuck the lid together, so I've got a nicely lined lid, and as you can see I've just folded those little tabs around the outside to help keep it together, and I'm just going to do the last bit on here. And all I'm doing is I'm going to put glue along the two edges here and fold it together, and then once that is held, which will take a couple of minutes, I'm going to then stick the two pieces down onto the sides just to give a little bit of reinforcement before I start putting the outer finish on. The two parts of my vanity case are now securely dried, and what I've done is I have finished the edges with some of the paint that I'm going to use for my final outside finish. Now I've done that because the next step is making the hinge. Now I don't know whether this piece will be displayed closed or open, so I want a certain degree of versatility at this point, and that's why I want to make it with a working hinge. To make my hinge, I am going to use some silver washi tape. Now this tape, which is a paper tape, is brilliant because it is very thin and it is very forgiving if you decide to do something over the top of it. And well, I've got it, so I'm going to use it. Now all that I do to get a suitable piece is I put a strip out onto my board, which I've done just out of camera shot, and then with my scalpel and a metal rule I have cut a small strip, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my two pieces together, and then I'm going to attach the hinge where I want it to go on the back of the piece, and it's going to pretty much cover the entire join. What I've done is I've stuck quite a large piece of the washi tape on the outside, and then I've stuck a smaller piece on the inside, which I will finish eventually with a couple of little marks and things to make it look like it's actually an hinge that you can see on the inside. Now obviously if you know that you want to display the piece open, you can glue it, stick it, make sure that it stays in the position that you want. I'm not sure yet, so I'm going to make it and assume that I want it to be shut, but I've also got the option to have it at least partly ajar and have something coming out of it. But that is the basics. Now I'm going to move on to my exterior finish. To do my exterior finish, I am going to be using tissue. Now this is single ply tissue, just the kind that you use to blow your nose on. Now I'm using this because I want it to have a small amount of texture, and that is something that I will get from this. But I'm going for this rather than going for a leather, fake leather or whatever, because this piece is based on a real piece, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about that now, but it had a very fake texture to the outside. It wasn't particularly high quality, but it was what it was. And so that's the kind of look that I'm going to go for by using that. And all I'm going to do is I am going to use a small amount of glue and put on several layers of my single ply tissue, just to sort of build up a nice slightly textured surface. The vanity case has now had a couple of coats of the single ply tissue. Now I did find that because of my folds I had to smooth it out a bit, and I actually used some of the washi tape. I just put a piece of washi tape around to cover it over, and that's why there's a sort of greyer look underneath that. And I've also touched up the paint around the lid. Now before I go forward, I think I'm going to make a little mirror to go inside the lid. I can't remember if there was a mirror inside the lid of the original one. I've got a thought that there wasn't, but I think it's something that was a possibility, so I'm going to do that with a little bit of mirrored card. I'm sure I've got some around here somewhere. And then I'm going to get on with painting, because once it's painted I can then add the finishing touches, a little fake lock, a handle on the lid, that sort of thing. So I cut a 1/4 inch strip off my bit of mirror card, and then I cut it down to a piece that was 1/2 inch long, and I've stuck that inside. As you can see, I've now got that. It's not the best, but I don't want it to look brand new. This is supposed to be an old piece. And I've also redone the internal hinge. It's a little bit bigger because the one piece kept coming off, but you live and learn. And to be fair, if it's displayed open, there'll be things in there that will sort of disguise that, or I'll just make it look like it's a piece of duct tape that's been put on there to repair it at some point, because it happens. With the paint applied, I am turning my attention to some trim pieces. Now, the original piece that this was based off had a metal edge on each piece. Now, I'm not going to replicate that, but using some thin cardstock that I have coloured in a sort of silvery colour, I am going to apply a bit of trim around there, and maybe a bit of trim on the corners. I haven't decided on that yet. And then I'm going to be working on some decorative hinges, a handle for the lid, and of course a little faux lock, which, whilst it won't actually lock, I am intending to function to at least keep the box sort of closed. I have added the trim around the lid and around the bottom. I was just going to do corners, but I decided that it looked neater if I did it this way. I've also added a fake lock, which means that if I want to store it closed, I can just put a little bit of glue and keep it shut. I've got false hinges on the back. I've got a little handle on the top, and I've also put some little feet on it. Now, I can't remember if the original had little feet. I think it might have done, but I've just used some seed beads for that. And well, there we have it. It still opens so that I could store some little toiletries or something inside. And yeah, I'm quite pleased with how it's turned out. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and comment. Subscribe if you'd like to see more, and possibly even ring that notification bell. I think that's what you're supposed to say. I upload videos regularly, all kinds of different miniature pieces. And until next time, bye.